coldest take on the planet incoming, but I quite enjoy Mario games. I think I can safely call it one of my favourite gaming franchises. I haven't played all or even most of his games, but I've extensively played more games in this series than in any other. Both Galaxy games remain in my top 5 favourites of all time, with Odyssey and the last 3 mainline Mario Karts being up there as well, and plenty of other mainline games, spin-offs and crossovers holding a special place in my heart. More specifically the ones on the Wii and DS, since that's what I grew up on. Mario's always been a franchise with strong gameplay at its core, but it's never been one that focused too much on story. I'm not going to peddle the whole Miyamoto hates story narrative, because I haven't researched into that, I don't know how much of it is true, but either way, the mainline Mario platformers are pretty bare bones in that regard. That's why it didn't seem like the best suited game to bring into a movie format, especially with our good friends Illumination at the helm who haven't made a single good film in the last decade. I haven't seen all of them, but I'm gonna go out on a limb and guess that The Secret Life of Pets 2 is not some kind of hidden masterpiece. But I guess the series has had pretty beloved stories here and there between the first 3 Paper Mario games and the Mario and Luigi quadrilogy, and the trailers for the new movie did seem to be putting people at ease after the cast listing broke the internet. I've been quite looking forward to this, and then I had a bright idea for this video. Not only could I talk about the new movie after seeing it with the boys, but I could also check out the other Mario movies for the first time and cover those alongside it. Yup, the plural in the title wasn't a typo. Mario had 2 other film outings over 30 years ago. Chances are you've heard about the live action one with Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo, but there's another one from 1986 that I hadn't even heard about until I saw it in a friend's letterbox list for Japanese animation. So I figured it might be fun to check them out and cover those before I talk about the new kid on the block. I gotta stress though, I'm not a film critic. If you're after any kind of objective, intellectual, analytical critique, then this is not going to be the video or channel for you. I'm just going off of how much I enjoyed watching each of these. With that clarification out of the way, let's go. Super Mario Bros. Great Mission to Rescue Princess Peach is a weird-ass movie, and I mean that in a positive way. It is a journey of Mario and Luigi going to save Peach from Bowser, or I guess Koopa since this predates the Bowser name, done as a quirky little hour-long anime movie. I looked on Wikipedia to see if there was any kind of interesting production history to this one, but it seems to be as simple as they made this because Mario was popular. The article also informed me that this is technically an isekai, so I'm gonna close this tab now. I think I've had enough. There isn't a whole lot to go over here. It's exactly what you'd picture when you hear the term quirky 80s anime movie about Mario. It's got a very simple plot and art style, but I think that works kinda well actually. At this point, Mario only had a few games, with this coming out around the same time as Mario 2 in Japan. And weirdly enough, despite this having way less to work with in the live action movie, which I'll talk about in a bit, it feels like a way more faithful adaptation that plays around with the source material a lot more. They actually bring in enemies and music from the series, and it's nice. The plot's as basic as it gets. Mario and Luigi collect some MacGuffins so they can save Peach, but I don't think it needed much more than that. There wasn't much more to it than that in the original Mario Bros. Game, so it's best not to overcomplicate it when there was no other precedent for video game movie adaptations at the time. Instead, they try and focus on making it silly and funny, and I think that's to its favour. The movie isn't laugh out loud funny, but I'd say it has enough jokes that at least got a chuckle out of me. The dialogue is part of that, but it's mainly down to the visual gags and the solid comedic timing. The animation quality helps with that. It's nothing mind-blowing, but I think it looks pretty nice. The characters are cartoony and expressive, and the goofiness never feels as weird to me as it does with the 1993 film, because the tone remains consistent. The backgrounds being very simplistic might have been a budgetary thing, but I think it adds to the visual charm. There are some decent songs during the travel montages too. And I could talk about all the weird shit in this movie, but I'd be here all day. Between Mario becoming part of a family of birds, or the underwater scenes where they just decide, no, Mario can breathe water now, clearly foreshadowing Lake Michigan Monster 32 years later, or the twist with the stupid blue dog thing that I don't even want to spoil because it's so out of left field, or the 2 separate times they pause to advertise real-world Mario food products, the second time actually impacting the plot since it distracts Mario for long enough to lose the star. This isn't an amazing movie or anything, it's just kinda mildly charming and entertaining and sometimes pretty funny. Not every joke lands, Koopa's not that interesting here, he's just kind of an r/nice guy, and I never felt like the blue dog justified its existence for 95% of his screen time, but there's not a whole lot to dislike here. I enjoyed myself overall, and I would actually recommend this to anyone who likes Mario or quirky old anime. The weird stuff that I mentioned only scratches the surface, so if you want to check it out for yourself, then the entire thing is up for free on YouTube. Restored in 4K resolution as well, available both in subbed and dubbed versions. Go forth and watch it and be just as baffled as I was. One last thing I'll mention actually is that this movie is significantly more varied and experimental with the designs of the Toads than the modern Paper Mario games, and that is very amusing to me.
Super Mario in real life.
The 1993 Super Mario Bros. Film is more or less the poster boy for the video game movie curse, where every video game movie to release for a while was apparently a terrible adaptation. I wouldn't know since I haven't seen most of the older ones, but if this was the standard that was set back then, I think I get it. This isn't a particularly strong standalone movie, nor is it a good adaptation of the source material, so I'm left to wonder who this was even for. Sure, the Mario world hadn't been built up through that many games at the time, so all they had to go off story-wise was Mario and Luigi save a captured princess, which I guess they technically do here, but the games at the very least had established colourful and varied environments at this point beyond New York, but worse. They had character designs that were more interesting than regular-ass humans, generic dinosaurs, and whatever those things are. They had a Bowser that was more than a businessman in a suit with a stupid haircut who gets duped and overwhelmed really easily at several points. I guess I'm glad Koopa doesn't share a main name with him because this is kind of embarrassing. I don't know, there's not much for me to really discuss here. The story has very little of interest and a lot of scenes end up being pretty forgettable. The characters are mostly flat and boring, like Daisy barely does anything of note, Koopa's a lame villain who fails to be threatening or entertaining for the majority of his screen time, and the same goes double for his wife, or whoever this was that does the skull emoji face IRL. I think this would have probably benefited from waiting until later to come out so the Mario universe could be more fleshed out and have more source material to pull from. But even then, as this is, it only ties back to Mario in the naming of things for the most part, in spite of a few references and things from the games thrown in, which I did appreciate. I can't bring myself to say I dislike this movie though. I think it's got some fun elements. There are a few okay enough action scenes, and there's a solid amount of humour to be found from small dialogue exchanges and visual gags every now and again. The highlights were Iggy and Spike, they were actually pretty entertaining side villains. I also like Bob Hoskins as Mario in this. Despite the kind of voice I associate with Mario nowadays, the Brooklyn accent always felt like the next best thing, and I liked the performance overall. It's silly and fun, and I like that he isn't an asshole towards Luigi. He's genuinely supportive of him whenever he does a good job with plumbing or is fumbling trying to ask Daisy out. And even though the visuals have definitely aged really poorly, I don't know, I'd think it gives this a good bit of that low-budget 90s charm, you know? A lot of it might be kinda boring, but I like that even though it makes the tone a little all over the place, and makes it difficult for me to take the serious moments seriously, it isn't afraid to be silly and goofy, and some of those moments worked for me. Like, for God's sake, this man gets devolved into a monkey and Koopa reacts like this. Monkey. I don't feel particularly strongly about this movie or even like it, but I'm kind of glad that I saw it. It feels like it does have legitimate heart put into parts of it, and I can totally see why it has its fans. I can see why it has its haters too, of course, but one of the worst movies ever made feels a little excessive. I just don't personally want to watch it again unless it's for a group movie night or something. Actually, do you think this is the movie that Ralph Fiennes wanted to kill John Leguizamo over in The Menu? That sounds funny actually, I'm gonna headcanon that from now on. Second best movie of the year for me, easily, not even a contest. Going into this movie, I had no clue what to expect. I was hoping it'd either be really fun or a disastrous shit show, as long as I felt something. Well, I watched it, and yeah, it was fun. I liked it. It doesn't quite dethrone Despicable Me 1 as my favourite from Illumination. Despite having a huge leg up in presentation over it, I think Despicable Me was funnier, better paced, and had a stronger emotional core. But this is a very close second, and other than that, there's basically no competition for it being my favourite Illumination movie by a massive landslide. I think it goes without saying that this is their best film visually. The environments play a huge part in that, especially with all the vibrant colours and sprawling landscapes. The action was shockingly well done too, I didn't know Illumination had that in them. The zippy movements and good use of squash and stretch lead to all the fights having plenty of energy to them. The only issue I had with a lot of them though is that they're very rarely actual proper back and forth fights. It's usually either just barreling through a crowd, or one guy dominating until they win, or the other guy immediately turns the tables and dominates back. It's not a deal breaker though, they're all enjoyable at the very least. My favourite one was the Rainbow Road scene. That one had a lot of impressive long takes and managed to build a good amount of tension. The thing that caught most people's attention though was how the movie sounded. Chris Pratt has been getting absolutely ragged on for the last year and a half, and I can't say I ever got on board the hate train myself. I like the guy as an actor. He's good in the MCU, the Lego Movie, and Parks and Rec. All three of which have him playing a lovable goofball character, and they all let him show off his ability to sell comedy and emotional moments. I was holding out hope for him here, and I think he gave a pretty solid interpretation of Mario. The trailers did not do him justice at all, with his worst lines there being ones that didn't even make it into the final film, so why even put them in the trailer? He doesn't just do his normal speaking voice, he does at the very least put on the Brooklyn accent. They even do a little nod to Charles Martinet with a commercial at the start, and I kinda liked it. Does it suck that Charles himself didn't get the role? Obviously, but if it had to be a celebrity casting, then I think Pratt does a more than serviceable job. I liked Mario's self-doubt, desire to prove himself, and especially his worry about dragging down his brother, who's voiced incredibly well by Charlie Day. His voice fit Luigi like a glove, though he kinda doesn't get to do anything for most of the movie. He shares some nice scenes with his brother, but when he's captured by Bowser, he's stuck in a cage and spends the majority of the film sitting there off-screen with the unfunny Luma presumably saying more unfunny things. There's a scene where he has a flashback to Mario sticking up for him as a child, and then it fades back to a bunch of Shy Guys taking him away with his hands tied up. He looks at his hands and clearly feels bad about being helpless without his brother, all conveyed very well without dialogue, and I thought that was going to lead to him getting a scene to prove that he was capable on his own. And it does have a payoff in the climax where he saves Mario, but nothing before that where he really gets to stand up for himself. Bowser obviously got the best performance in the movie. I love Jack Black in pretty much everything he's in, so of course I was going to love him here. I like this take on Bowser. Sure, we don't get to see much of what sent him down this path, but I like that his frustrations and actions stem from anger caused by his inability to communicate. Or at least that's what Jack Black said the goal with the character was. It's a kinda similar thing to what the 1986 movie was going for with how down bad he is, except here Bowser has actual stage presence, some level of menace, and a way more standout vocal performance. He's also just way funnier and more prominent. The rest of the cast I don't have nearly as much to say about. Anya Taylor-Joy as Peach was alright. I like that she got to be more active and competent, which is in line with some portrayals in the games and comics. She shared some nice scenes with Mario too. I like the encouragement she gives him after failing the obstacle course, and the final exchange in that scene actually got a chuckle out of me. Seth Rogen as Donkey Kong was a lot better than I expected. I actually kinda liked the chemistry he had with Mario, and I'm fine with this being the route they take him if they had to have him speak. Keegan-Michael Key as Toad was entertaining, Charles Martinet got some cameos and that was nice, Cranky Kong was given exactly 0 good lines, and the rest of the side characters like Kamek and Foreman Spike were fine and served their purpose as well. The score was shockingly excellent here. Hard to believe I'm still talking about an Illumination movie. I know once that one clip released at the Game Awards, everyone started clowning on the Sonic movies because this minute-long scene contained more music from the source material than both Sonic films combined, and yeah, I'd think that's fair enough. Especially because this one scene isn't a fluke. The entire score is full of motifs from across Mario's entire history, while impressively never feeling forced. Every musical homage fits its scene perfectly. Also, while I have no trouble not doing the whole pointing at the screen thing during the actual movie because I have impulse control, my guard was down when I was talking with my friends during the credits, and then I did the point completely involuntarily when Gusty Garden Galaxy started playing. I was so close, man. The jokes were surprisingly amusing. The voice cast is solid as I mentioned before, and they have a good sense of comedic timing. Not everything lands, this is still an Illumination movie, but I got more legitimate laughs than I expected. DK's reaction to Mario saving his life in particular got me good. And thankfully the best line in the Bowser and Luigi scene was kept from the trailers, and I'm so happy about that. Also, they put Bowser in a jar at the end and I lost my goddamn mind. The popular real-world music they threw in at several points felt very unneeded, especially since some of them seem to have replaced pieces of the score that still hold up to the rest of the movie. But at the very least, there are songs that I like. Take On Me, Holding It for a Hero, and Mr. Blue Sky are all bangers, but they all pale in comparison to how funny it would have been if Wake Up in the Morning feeling like P. Diddy actually did play during the movie. And I know everyone loves Jack Black's song Peaches. I just thought it was kind of okay. I might have gotten my expectations a little too high when I heard Bowser had a musical number before I saw the movie, but even still, I don't find this that funny or catchy. It's well sung, and I find the concept funny of Bowser singing about how down bad he is, but I was just kind of underwhelmed by the scene itself. I'm not sure where to really take this from here, so I think this seems like a good enough ending point. If you're looking for an amazingly well-written animated masterpiece, then I don't think this will do much for you. But if you're a fan of Mario who wants a breezy, fast-paced, fun watch with a ton of visual and musical references to pick up on, then I'd recommend checking this out for sure. It's not a movie I can say I particularly love, but it's one I had a good amount of fun with, which is a miracle for a company like Illumination. I haven't seen all of their films, but a lot of what I have seen has been pretty insufferable. So this was a good showing of what they can do when they actually try with something that shows a clear amount of heart and passion for the material it's adapting. It's my favourite of the 3 movies I talked about in this video, and I gotta say, compared to a lot of other video game movie series, Mario's got a pretty decent track record in that department. Even with the live action one, it's not even close to the worst video game movie I've seen. And on the flip side, I think the Illumination movie can stand pretty on par with Detective Pikachu in the Sonic films. This is where I'll close things off. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, and I truly cannot wait for the minion to be added to Mario Kart like the opening logo was promising us.